welcome to episode 40 of I Got Gameplay. Yes, it's the big 4-0. And tonight with me, because we have a very special topic, of course, we have some excellent co-hosts. Let's start with a man who never misses a show because he's either really bored or because he's very loyal. That's Mr. Travis Goss. Travis!
How's it going? Oh my god, we're over the hill now.
Yes, we're on episode 40 now. I remember when this show started off with episode 1, and that was it, really. But it was awesome, because we've been doing great episodes, great timing in terms of, material we've been putting out, and also the rapid change from being just a podcast to a radio show. So you can't get any better than that. Now, let's introduce another man. He's also well known for being having a huge history in terms of Metroid Prime, and also a huge gaming historian, and one of those people who basically believes that retro is the best, Mr. Lee Garasiche. Lee!
How's it going?
Awesome, my friend. How are you doing today?
Wonderful, and no truer statements have been made.
Aha! And today we have a new person with us, a gentleman who's basically been with Mega Powers Radio since this Sunday, as he did a show called Otaku Nation with myself. It is Mr. Stephen Wadling. See, I got it right!
Hey, how's it going, man?
It's good, my friend. We've done really well. This is I Got Gameplay. It's going to be a different twist for you, Stephen, and I'm glad to have you on the show. And making his return to I Got Gameplay, a gentleman who held this show down on his back. He held the company on his shoulders. He's literally I Got Gameplay's version of John Cena. He is the man, the myth, the legend, and probably the guy that stole my wallet the other day, Mr. Miguel Leon.
Why you gotta assume that I stole something just because I'm Puerto Rican? That's messed up, Michael. Not right.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm alright. I'm tired. I just got up 10 minutes ago, so if I'm a little bit slow on the receiving end of a joke, just give me a second. I need to perk up.
Yes, Miguel.
They have pills for that, you know.
Oh dear. So, what have you been up to, Miguel? What have you been doing while you've been away?
I went to Mythicon, which is a local convention that popped up in Orlando. It was its first year, and I decided to check it out, mostly because two of their big celebrities that they had there was Louis Lofog of Atop the Fourth Wall and Little Karibo of Team 4-Star.
Can you sing the Top of Fourth Wall song?
I did when they did the live show. They filmed the live show there, and I sang it there.
Ooh, awesome. So how was that live show? Was it any good?
I barely remember it because it was so late in the night, and I had done so much that day. I think I was on and off passing out during that show, which sucks because I really wanted to be awake for it, but I'm just sitting there going, I can't do this. I gotta go get a Red Bull or something. I can't. And I remember just nodding on and off, but
I could just see you going, Linkara.
No, I was up for the theme music, but once the theme music kicked on, I just slumped into my chair next to me and just like, ugh. Wake me up when Lil Karibo does his show.
Oh no.
But it was fun. It was fun. He debuted a new episode. Well, it's not new anymore. He just posted it. And Little Karibo debuted a new episode of his Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged series. I'm so upset that I forgot to get Little Karibo's autograph, but to be honest, I forgot he was going to be a part of the con. I was mostly focused on getting Linkara's autograph, which I did. But that was fun. I caught up on a lot of Little Karibo's work since then.
Yeah,
what?
I had a chance to meet Little Karibo. They did a roast for him at Youmacon, and just him and Team 4-Star getting incredibly drunk. It was awesome.
I remember hearing about
Youmacon?
that.
Youmacon.
Is that like the convention for Jewish gamers?
There are a lot of Jews in Detroit, so yeah, I suppose.
Yeah, so other than that, I was out the week before for a housewarming party, and today I've been up mostly typing up a script for this job for hire.
There you go. He's working and working and working. Miguel's got it on all cylinders. And just so you know, today we also have Mr. Mike Payne join us. He's taking more of a production role today, so he'll be like the Roz to my Frasier, so to speak.
Just so you know, I'm up here behind the glass.
You're the Kevin Dunn of I Got Gameplay.
He is, yes. And we also got the gentleman who's just joined us now, replacing Samantha Jenings, who can't be with us for some unknown reason. She probably has problems. I don't know, girl stuff maybe. Mr. Sean Walker. Sean, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, mate. I'm doing well. Yourself?
Yes, awesome. I'm having a very, very good day. Making sure that I Got Gameplay gets up and running. I visited my daughter today and gave her sort of a pre-birthday wish with my nephew, because I can't be with her tomorrow for her birthday party, because it's just going to be stacked full of relatives that I don't really care for. So instead, I came, saw her today, we had fun, and that's pretty much it on my day, of course. So let's move on to the gaming news section. Let's see if we can find that gaming news voice file. No, Payne's not going to do it for me.
Live, everyone.
There you go. So, gentlemen, what's in the news this week? So, Miguel, what's in the news this week?
I was supposed to find some news. Hold on, I've been away from the show for so long I completely forgot about that.
Let's segue from Miguel to Travis for a second. While Miguel
leave me last.
Try to get himself some energy drink. So, Travis, what's in the news this week?
Okay, before I get into the news, I want to ask the panel a question. Who here was one of the early adopters of the Nintendo 3DS when it first came out?
Nope.
I guess I'm the only one.
Yes.
Well, what happened, for those of you who are unaware, is, or wearing underwear, what happened is, we all know when the system first launched, it was $250, and then sales were very sluggish, and then 6 months later, Nintendo announced a price drop, which got a lot of people angry at the fact that they spent all this money on the system, and then there's this huge price drop. And there's this, to make all the customers happy, they had an ambassador program for early adopters of the 3DS, which got 10 free NES games and 10 free Game Boy Advance games to download for your 3DS. Mm-hmm. Now, that segues into this story, which a lot of people, when they heard that the Wii U got a price drop from $350 to $300, people were assuming that there was going to be an ambassador program for early adopters of the Wii U. Well, unfortunately, Nintendo has no plans for a Wii U ambassador program. Nintendo said there are no plans to implement a 3DS ambassador program on the Wii U, according to a statement made to Wii U Daily. Nintendo recently announced a $50 price change on the Wii U Deluxe Bundle, which made Wii U Daily question if the company might offer an ambassador program, as it did with the 3DS drop from $250 to $170. According to a Nintendo rep, however, the ambassador program is only available to any Nintendo 3DS owner who purchased their system before August 12, 2011, and there are no plans for a similar program for Wii U. The representative also apologized, stating that, "I know this isn't what you were hoping for." So, cue the dying Pac-Man sound effect.
See if I can... there you go. There you go. Nintendo had a history of doing this. They, especially when it comes to pissing off their fans, it seems that that's the general consensus with them at the moment. I don't know why, but predominantly it's probably from Nintendo Japan instead of Nintendo US, because I know in the United States they try to be as friendly as possible, but I say try. But in terms of, as a company as a whole, they haven't been getting good PR. They're probably second place as the worst company in terms of them and Microsoft at the moment. They're running head to head.
Well, you've got a personal bias against them after recent events.
Well, I've actually managed to get my account back in order because Nintendo actually had it overturned by YouTube. So I'm fine in terms of my stuff. I still love Nintendo, but as a company, I just think I don't know what they're doing. It seems they take 2 steps forward and 6 steps back. But the ambassador program should have been, if they were going to implement it for the 3DS, it should have been implemented for the Wii U. Probably due to the sluggish sales, that's probably the reason why they've decided to cancel it and think, well, if you're not going to buy the bloody thing, then we're not going to give you any perks. Anybody else got any notes on this? What's your opinion?
I would say that it's kind of ridiculous, especially considering from the perspective, there's no reason why they can't give out some points to go buy games that are more than likely we already all own, like a Zelda title on the online shop. There's absolutely no excuse for them not to do something like that.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that one, because I know a lot of people who are using this ambassador program as a way to gain some free titles, and the fact that that's not being implemented on the Wii U just shows that there's general bias basically against their own consumer.
So, how does it show their bias against the consumer?
No, their own consumer.
If they did it for one, the other. But how is that bias against them? They did it once, they didn't do it for this one. And not to mention that one was, an $80 price drop as opposed to a $50? I mean, prices change. I think people are blowing this way out of proportion. It's not a big deal at all. Prices change. Sometimes you buy something early and it drops. It happens. It happens all the time. Happens when you buy a computer. Happens when you buy an MP3 player. Happens when you buy a car. Happens when you buy a house. Happens when you buy a video game system. You gamers are just getting too goddamn entitled. You're not deserving of something extra just because they dropped the price.
I'm going to partly agree with that. I mean, consoles drop all the time and someone gets butthurt, but they paid more than the other, but that's the price you're going to pay if you wanted ASAP.
True, but in the sense of the ambassador program, though, why aren't they actually implementing that on one other than the other, though? Why is it they're only doing it for one system and not for the other system?
Well, let me ask you a question, though. How long has it been between when the console launched to this price drop? How long has it been?
It has been
a little less than a year.
Going on 10 months.
10 months? All right. How long was the 3DS out before its price drop? 6 months, you would say? 4
or 5 months even. It was pretty short.
4 or 5 months. I think that because of the fact that it was less than half a year out from the price drop. I think that's why they did the incentive program on the 3DS. For the Wii U, we're almost up to about a year in the console's lifespan. I think the distance between the launch is enough to where this is just a regular price drop. Whereas in the 3DS, 5 months after that was kind of that was a shady move that I think they really, from a PR perspective, should have, done something to kind of quell. But in this case, I think it's just a regular price drop, but I think people need to just kind of, it's unfortunate. You bought the console, you got to live with it. I mean, there is a sense of responsibility you have to take in that regard.
Well, for someone like myself, I've purchased, the Wii U when it first originally was released. It's the only console I've ever bought sans the Super Nintendo on launch day. So I have no issue with paying top buck for it back then because it was I wanted the console, I bought it. Some guys can actually choose to buy it later on, and some savvy customers tend to actually buy something when it's in its third to fourth reissue. So in terms of that, yeah, I agree.
The only other thing is what some of the customers are a little peeved about, if you will, is in a few months they're going to be releasing the limited edition Legend of Zelda Wind Waker HD bundle, Wii U bundle, and it's going to be the system, of course, and the gamepad is going to have the gold emblem or anything or stuff like that on the controller, and the downloadable version of the game, and also a digital download of the Legend of Zelda Hyrule Historia. Thank you. And I guess that's why some customers are probably a little upset about that. But if you're really adamant about wanting something like that, even if you own a Wii U, just go buy it. Go buy a second one. What the hell?
Well, the Hyrule Historia, I've got a copy, and literally, I got it at a time where you could get it for $20. So it's not really that much of an issue in terms of that. the limited edition one that they're actually bringing out, it doesn't look as amazing as previous versions of it. You know, it's like, I remember the Pokemon Nintendo 64 that they released. It had like a Pikachu engraved on it. It looked awesome, you know. In terms of this, it just looks like they put some etching on the gamepad.
I mean, if you really are that, you know, obsessive about this is catered to Zelda fanatics. I mean, I love Zelda, but I'm not going to go that fucking crazy over it. But still.
Well, also, hearing some news from fanboysanonymous.com, Nintendo are also going to be releasing the 2DS, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
Yes, they are.
You broke that story on Fanboy, so tell us a bit more about that, Travis.
Well, let me bring it up here on my computer. But yeah, this basically is going to be what Nintendo is considered to be an entry-level 3DS system without the 3D aspects. And this is going to be for kids who are under the age of 7, because on the 3DS it says it's for people 7 and up.
I wouldn't even use it for like 7 and up, to tell you the truth, because kids are developing their eyesight, and usually stuff like 3D, it's not really good for them.
No, it's not really. Okay, here it is. I got the story, and I guess I'll just read it to you guys here. Let's see here. Here you go. So let's start with the announcement of the 2DS. The latest handheld will play both 3DS and DS games in strikingly amazing 2D, hence the name of the announced handheld. The 2DS will have the same functions as the current 3DS and 3DS XL units, including wireless connectivity and access to the Nintendo eShop. The system will retail for $129.99 US on October 12th, the same day Pokemon X and Pokemon Y drop.
So,
and this, if you see go to fanboysanonymous.com and look up the story. But if you look at the handheld itself, I'm sorry, it looks like a Fisher-Price toy. It's not a clamshell fold like the other systems, and you're giving this to little kids, and you know how little kids are going to be with games and screens. Everything is going to be all scratched up.
Well, in terms of the device itself, let's go into the rest of the co-hosts here and hear opinions. We'll start with you, Sean, because you've been having a bit of battle with Nintendo over your 3DS. Would you purchase a 2DS?
I wouldn't purchase anything from Nintendo ever again. Unless you get it for free, like I did with my current XL. But, like, you know, until they fix my DS for free, no chance.
Okay, so explain to us, like, in terms of the 2DS, does it look appealing? Would you, if you had a child that you wanted to get them to experience the 3DS, but you didn't want to buy a 3DS because also it was a 3D situation, would you buy them a 2DS? Does it look like something that they could play with?
Well, I think it's a more child-friendly design than the clamshell because, like one of my YouTubers said, the kids with the clamshell, they like to open, flick it open, flick it close, flick it open, flick it close, and it'll wear down the hinge, and the hinge will snap, and then they gotta send it off to Nintendo and get it repaired, which they won't repair it because it's accidental damage, and you know, all that jazz.
Well, that's extremely true. What about you, Lee? What do you think of this?
It does look like a slice of cheese, though.
Yeah, there.
Blue cheese.
So yeah,
it does look unusual, but when I first heard the idea, I really thought it was a good idea because I've seen the 3D in a few of the games, and it is cool, but I want to play Star Fox 64. You know, there's so many titles on the system that I want to play. I thought it was something I would look into, and then I seen the pictures of it, and I was immediately turned off by the Fisher-Price looking aspect of it, but I have yet to actually get it in my hands and play it. Plus, you have to kind of consider how much of the functionality are you losing if a developer puts some of that aspect into the game.
Very much so. I think with the 3D itself, it's at this point in time, it's more so a gimmick. I think the only games that have actually been used on is usually the Nintendo ones. You know, like I think a prime example of that is the Mario 3D. Is it Mario 3DS?
Yeah, there's that one in Star Fox.
Yeah, and in terms of that, you know, a lot of people may want to play to actually function with it, but the game functions very well without it as well. So you don't really have to actually do anything with that. So let's run on to Miguel. Miguel, what do you think?
All right, correct me if I'm wrong, but the actual 3DS, the original one, is it possible to turn off the 3D functionality on the actual 3DS, or do you have to keep it on?
Yes,
so you can't actually
turn it off,
you can't.
You not only are able to turn it off, you actually have a sliding switch where you can change the intensity of the 3D. So if you don't want too much 3D, you can just have a little 3D.
All right. In that regard, then, to me, this whole project seems just completely baffling and a bit telling when you consider that, to be quite honest, and I've always thought this, aside from the 3D aspect, I really can't see a difference between the games on the 3DS and games for the actual DS. Like, it's not an evolution of... I honestly don't. Honestly, I could see a lot of those games, maybe slightly dialed down, but I could see a lot of those games working on the 3DS. I don't see that big of a leap forward in terms of the technology, except for the 3D. And to me, that's the big gimmick that was selling the 3DS, and you've basically now made a console that completely strips that away. I mean, aside from the games that are on it, you know, the specific games that are on it, what's the big evolutionary selling point to this handheld? You know, I equated it to Nintendo releasing a version of the Wii that doesn't have Wiimote. That's just, you know, the classic controller, and that's it. You know, it doesn't have the wiggle functionality. It's kind of like that. And,
or basically saying a version of the Wii U without HDMI.
I wouldn't say that. To me, it would be like releasing a version of the Wii U without the actual screen controller.
Oh, the tablet controller.
The tablet controller. It's a big selling point to the console that really takes up a lot of the mystique behind it, and you've stripped that away now, so... You know, what's the big selling point aside from, we've got these games that you could specifically play on it? Like I said, like Legend of Zelda and Star Fox 64, you could port those over to the DS and not lose much in terms of the gameplay. Even from what I've seen with X and Y, it's not that big of a leap. I mean, yeah, from a conceptual standpoint it is, because it's a 3D game, but the 3D isn't so much that you couldn't pull that off on the DS. I think it confuses me, and I don't know who the handheld is geared to. And I've seen a lot of people compare this to when Nintendo released the Micro a couple of years ago. That was different, though. That was like when, to me, that reminded me of when PlayStation released their PS1 redesign right around the time the PS2 was coming out.
That was a terrible design, though.
It was, but it was at a time where they were easing people into another generation. They were like, all right, we know people are still going to buy PlayStation games. They haven't completely shifted over. So we're going to make this redesign to capitalize on it. They're not shifting over to a new handheld. You know, the 3DS is still their number one console. So to come out with a version of it that doesn't include its big selling points, it just confuses me. And I also have to point this out because I just read an article about it. Because of the fact that it's a slate now, the console itself is just one screen. It's not two screens. Basically, they cheated. They made one big screen and they just formatted it so that it only shows two separate images on it. I actually just read that in an article. It's just funny. Which they also said means that the top screen is actually also a touch screen, because if the bottom screen is also a touch itself, then the top as well. So if you can get that top half off that has the plastic over it, you can use the top screen as a touch screen as well. I just thought that was interesting.
Well, let me ask you a question then.
What's up, Internet Wrestling community? This is Anthony Mango of SmarkOutMoment.com, a wrestling website dedicated to the smart marks like you and I. We break down and review every pay-per-view with predictions and spoilers, and you can catch our weekly podcast on YouTube for some smack talk. There's no rules here, and we show no mercy. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at SmarkOutMoment, where we analyze all the angles, shoot first, and kill kayfabe. That's www.smarkoutmovement.com. Why mark out when you can smark out?
In terms of Nintendo's business, they're a family-orientated company, right? If you've got loads of parents bitching about the 3D and saying that's going to ruin their kids' eyes and it's not appealing to children, wouldn't you say making the 2DS was actually a smart move?
No, I would say if you're a parent that doesn't want your child to use the 3D elements on their handheld, just tell them to turn it off. Just do your job. If you're a parent and it's something you don't want them to do, just tell them not to do it. You know,
I'm not taking a shot at you, Miguel, but I'm a parent, and I'll tell you something. I tell my kids to not do something. You know what they do?
Oh.
They do the opposite.
I was going to say that
they do exactly
perfectly by a man who does not have children.
Yeah, they will do the opposite. My son, quite recently, I had to take their Skylanders away from them and like literally store them in a cupboard because my children. I said to my son, "Don't break the arm on one of the Skylanders." What do you think he did? Broke the arm. And I had to replace the Skylander, put it back, because my daughter was sitting there crying, sobbing like crazy, because her younger brother wanted to destroy something. If you tell a kid not to do something, they're going to do the exact opposite. If I tell my child, don't touch that 3D switch, he's going to see that as the biggest thing in the world. He won't stop thinking about it. He'll be sitting there going, why didn't he tell me not to touch that? Oh, he thinks because he's an adult, he can tell me not to touch this. I'm going to touch my eyes. So that's pretty much it. And they'll put it all the way up. They'll put it all the way up to high intensity. Unless you've got a child that will literally listen to every word you say, they will literally do the exact opposite. So as a console, the 2DS it looks like it's geared towards those type of children. And it also, the way that it looks as well, it looks like one of those tablet games. You know that, I'm trying to think of what like the biggest kids company at the moment. Over here in the UK, it's Leapfrog. I don't know if you have it over.
It is.
Yeah,
we
have it here
I'm
too.
talking about it. It is Leapfrog too, and I've seen those.
Yeah, and it looks exactly like one of those things. So I can see what they're doing. They're trying, and it's also cheaper because the console itself, around here in the UK, it's $109. You know, and that's way cheaper compared to the 3DS itself. The 3DS, if I wanted to get one second hand, and that's without a game, it would be $159.
Well, the XL is 169.
There you go.
I don't know. I guess in that regard, maybe it has a fan base. I'm just trying to, from an overall standpoint, it kind of just confuses me that, you know, for a lot of the reasons I just said. And to be honest with you, when it comes to handhelds, Nintendo's kind of annoyed me in this regard because it seems as though whenever they have a handheld, they have to release 3 or 4 different versions of said handheld. You know, we had the DS, and then we had the the DS Lite, then the DSi, then the DSi XL, then the 3DS, then the 3DS XL. It just seems like, to me, it just seems like they're scrambling to try to make as much money off their handhelds as possible. Because
it's a big market. That's why they make.
It's a big market, but it's a dying market because they've been. Yeah.
The DS is a higher seller than Wii. How can you say it's a dying market?
Overall, because they're now trying to compete with tablets and smartphones. In their own world, they're the highest seller, but that's compared to like the PS Vita. I think on a grander scale, I don't think they had the market penetration that.
No, didn't the DS sell more than the Game Boy?
Yeah, it's actually the highest selling, not just portable console. It's actually one of the highest selling consoles.
The DS?
The DS.
Yeah, get your facts, Miguel. Come on.
As long as they have Pokemon, I'm going to keep buying them.
Yeah.
If I could drop my opinion on this, I think I'm going to be the only person here who's going to be positive about this. This is just a budget version of their 3DS system. Saw people didn't really like 3D. They knew they wanted to have something for the kids because the other one, it could have worked for them. I know you're saying this looks like a Fisher-Price toy, but I look at it and I see something that's a lot more solid than when I look at a regular 3DS. For me personally, I would much rather get a 3DS XL. I like the bigger screen and all that. I think this is a neat little thing to do. I think it's worth for them to have this budget system for people who want to go out there and get this on the cheap. I think it's going to be great for kids. As far as the two-screen thing you were mentioning before, Gail, I don't think that's how it works. Screen is a resistive screen that would be the membrane on top of the actual screen. So I don't think the top screen is going to be a touch screen. You break the plastic off. But regardless, the whole one screen, that's just another cost saver. Take it out 3D, it's a cost saver. And I don't think this one is able to play the older system game on it.
No,
I think that's something else they're
removing. It can play DS games as well. It plays
DS, but it can't play.
It doesn't play Game Boy games. No. Oh, you mean advanced games? Game Boy Advance.
Advanced. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
We're also kind of missing a very good point that options are always a good thing, right?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. That's why they have so many DSs. They have the bigger one and the smaller one.
Yeah, you want to pick up a system for your younger child and see if they can handle it. And, if they break it or anything, well, then not to get a 3DS. And I think it's a wonderful idea. I mean, it does sound like it's poorly made, but then again, that's not the first time something like that's happened. I mean, look at the top-loading NES. Look at the Super Nintendo 2. Nintendo's known for coming out with cheaper versions of the console. But I think it's a good thing.
Totally agree with you.
How many PlayStation 3s have we had now?
Yeah, that's another one. I've still got the first PlayStation 3, the Fat that came out. I still
have that one too.
That
to be fair though, I can attribute to them trying to shave off cost measures, because that early PlayStation 3 was way too expensive for them, which is why they had the high price tag. They're basically just re-releasing it to try to shave off, like, all right, let's take this out, maybe we can finally get it down to $2.99, which they eventually did.
Can't you say the same thing with Nintendo here? Because they're trying to make a budget console, as I said, it's more geared towards children, because it's, as Leah's basically stated, it's a console that you can literally give to a child. It looks chunkier, it looks durable, so they can mess around with the thing, and that there's not going to be any issues with it. The 3DS now, I think that console itself is actually geared towards, Nintendo loyalists and adults and sort of like teenagers, where this one can be geared towards more younger children, and they still get the same experience. My kid can still connect to me using the 2DS. I'm still trying to negotiate with my brother to give me my nephew's 3DS, and I'll just purchase him a 2DS because I think it's safer for him. It's an easier option, it's a better option, and I give kudos to Nintendo on this one for actually doing it.
I mean, I definitely give kudos to Nintendo as well. I mean, not anybody who's listened to me on this show so far knows I am a Nintendo fanboy, and I will always love Nintendo. And the thing is, yes, they have done some pretty peculiar things throughout their history. And I mean, who remembers the Virtual Boy? We all do. Yeah. And that was like the strangest of all systems. And oddly enough, even though at the time I tried it and it bothered me a little bit, I want to actually go collect it because, it's something that happened in Nintendo's history, Yes. And I support them. But
I remember. I remember that Christmas when you mentioned that playing the Virtual Boy. I remember when that came out, and I forget the name of the kid, but he brought it into lunch at school, and the thing was huge. But he was just so cool because it just came out, and then people would sit there and try to play it. It was so painful in your eyes to sit there and stare at it the first time you looked at it. But no one would complain because it just looked so cool. It was like the next thing, and then we all know what happened next.
Yes. So like I was going to say, for all the peculiar things Nintendo does, regardless of the Virtual Boy, everything else they've done, which is strange, actually worked out in their favor. What we think is going to be a little odd about the 2DS might actually do some good. Yeah. The only thing I've got a problem with is if people who are not in the know will walk into certain game stores and try to buy the system, and it's like, oh cool, Nintendo 2DS. Cool, I'm going to go buy this for my kids. Say, do you have any Nintendo 2DS games? Can you imagine what the store clerk is going to have to say to that customer?
He's going to be laughing his head off. Because I know they'll be just standing there going, well, they will be laughing at first, probably to his colleague, and then went, oh, by the way, this is actually 3D. It actually supports 3DS titles and blah 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 blah. You know,
have you guys ever worked in an electronics retail store? Because you get customers like that all the time, regardless.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone I worked at the Apple store, people come in, oh, you got the iPhone 3 Giga, and all types of different things come in.
Yeah, I've had that. I've had someone going, what's the difference between an Xbox 360 and an Xbox 360 with Kinect? Like, it has Kinect. So, you know, it happens. And you do have the funniest thing is when a parent goes to buy a game for a child, they are so inept, you know, and it gets to the point where a lot of people are out of the know in terms of gaming, that they're going to need that extra nudge. And it's not going to be such a big of an issue. I think once, like, the initial hurrah goes out from the console, people will just end up buying it. You know, they'll end up going, you know what, I'll buy this, I'll do this, and I got a 2DS, that might actually be pretty good for me in terms of that, or I'll go with a 3DS for myself because that's great. And, you know, it gives us more of an advantage to share the experiences that we have with this console with our children.
Well,
yeah, go on, Stephen.
Well, personally, if there was a 2DS XL, I'd buy it over the 3D XL because I'd never used the 3D in my life.
There you go. So that's pretty much it on that one. Let's go now to you, Sean. Any news?
I got zilch, mate.
Miguel, you found anything?
I found one thing that's interesting, only because I honestly had no idea they were actually making this, but some bit of news about the Soul Calibur 2 HD re-release that they're doing.
Yay!
They have officially confirmed they are putting both Spawn and Heihachi in both versions of Soul Calibur 2 HD. They're not splitting it up like they did with the original versions. For those of you that don't remember, the original PS2 and Xbox versions had their own specific characters. The Xbox version had Spawn, PS2 version had Heihachi,
and the GameCube version had Link.
Yes.
For this re-release, they're actually including both characters as playable characters in both versions. So both the PS3 and Xbox 360 versions will include both of these characters, as opposed to having them separate and specific. And I guess because there's no Wii U version, I guess they're not going to include Link as a playable character, which makes sense.
That would have been so weird, though, having Link on the PS or the Xbox.
It would. Like I said, I'm not angry that they don't have it, because it wouldn't make any sense. But I am excited for this. I honestly wasn't aware that they were making a Soul Calibur 2 re-release. That's my favorite version in the series, and this might be one that I might actually have to keep my eyes on, because if that's the case, you know, to be able to play as Spawn, which I've played the Xbox version and I kind of liked playing as Spawn, so who knows. Hopefully the game plays as good as it did on the PS2 and Xbox.
Very true. So, guys, you got any? Does anyone have any say on this? Do you want to talk about this quite quickly? I'm kind of disappointed myself, because the fact that Nintendo are not going to have the Link version. I wouldn't mind seeing that for the Nintendo Wii U, but again, they're being, in terms of third party, they're not doing that well.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't have any opinion on the Soul Calibur series. I had my fun with it on Dreamcast when they came out, and I still say that was one of the prime examples of why you should own a Dreamcast when it came out, but I kind of didn't get into the series and stay with it.
There's one reason you should have owned a Dreamcast, and that was that you could have a Chow as a Tamagotchi. It was awesome. In your memory card.
Well, we could go back and forth, because when I think of need to own Dreamcast, it goes right into Jet Grind Radio.
You mean Jet Set Radio?
Yeah, I gotta find a copy of that.
Right, let's go on to another bit of news as well. Apparently, Saints Row 4 has a bling edition of the game, which you literally have loads of different exclusives, but you pay $1 million for it. It's only available in game in the UK. So would you pay $1 million?
$1 million bucks?
Yeah, $1 million.
Literally $1 million. That's the price. $1 million. Holy
$1 million for a copy of Saints Row 4, and apparently it gives you a helicopter ride that you get with it. Let me bring up the stats here on it.
Like a real helicopter ride, or in the game?
A real helicopter ride. $1 million edition.
That price should be giving you a freaking helicopter.
You get a helicopter ride. Apparently, you get like a wine and dine thing, so you get to feel like you're the chief. I'm bringing it up now. Yeah, go on, Lee. Lee, you had something? You want to say something?
No, I didn't say anything.
Oh, okay. It's called the Commander-in-Chief Edition. You get the Virgin Galactic Space Flight, that's included as part of the pack. Full-size replica dubstep gun, so you've got a dubstep gun which is literally the size of a gun. You've got the Hostage Rescue Experience, Plastic Surgery, so if anyone wants to change their face, Spy Training Day, a Capsule Wardrobe, Personal Shopper for the day, 7 nights at a top royal suite, Burj Al Arab in Dubai, a week for 2 with Jefferson Hotel in Washington, D.C., and a first-class flight to Washington, D.C. and Dubai. And you get to drive a Lamborghini Gallardo and a new Toyota Prius plus 1 year insurance and a year supercar membership.
Okay, hold on a second.
And that's included with the game and everything else.
Okay.
How does Bling and Prius go in the same sentence? Okay.
All right, here's the thing. $1 million, okay, just to drive a Lamborghini?
Yep.
Why would you want to spend $1 million for all that stuff and just to drive a Lamborghini and we can just say, screw it, I'm buying the friggin' Lamborghini?
Because you get a copy of Saints Row 4 and all these other little experiences, including plastic surgery.
I got a question for everyone. What would you do with the plastic surgery?
I would look like Obama.
Yeah, Obama, but it's like Travis's voice. Shit, I could get my vocal cords changed. That's why I sound like an Englishman. But yeah, would this be tempting if you had $1 million? Would you spend it on Saints Row 4?
No.
If I had $1 million, there'd be a lot more things I'd be doing with it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to you people out there who are basically collectors, there's only one available of this. You know some asshole is going to go out and buy this.
And that is the dumbest asshole in the world.
Yeah,
If I ever win the lottery, I'll buy it.
I bet someone will buy it who doesn't want it.
How dumb can you be if you have $1 million to spare on just a video game, though?
Yeah.
Yeah. To be fair, though, if you had $1 million to spare on this, you probably have enough money to spare on the other stuff as well.
Yeah.
You're not. This is strictly just for the story. This is so that they can publish a story about somebody doing this. That's all this is. This is not. We're not supposed to be taking this at all seriously.
But do you think
agree.
this is worth $1 million though?
No.
No.
I'd love for someone to go into a bank and try and get a loan for it.
There's only one in existence. I need it.
That sounds like a great YouTube video.
I might do that.
Look, it comes with plastic surgery.
Yeah, it comes with, I want to change my face, damn you. And then I'll be like outside begging in the street with a cup.
I want to look like Al Pacino.
Are you hungry? No, I want a copy of Saints Row 4. $1 million edition.
Which version of Al Pacino?
I want to look like coked up Al Pacino from Scarface.
Yes!
Perfect. Go.
So there we go.
Look at my real friend!
There we go, guys. That's pretty much it for the news. So let's move on to today's topic. that's pretty much the theme of today's show is retro versus new. Now, we've got loads of opinionated hosts on the show. Loads! You know, guys, we have literally 22 hosts for the I Got Gameplay podcast. We've basically gone from the traditional four-man host team and built up this radio show. So we've got loads of opinions. Some say, you know, they love old style gaming like the Nintendo Entertainment System, the Sega Master Systems and the Sega Genesis. And then there's the other side of the spectrum who think new gaming is the most awesome thing that they've seen. You know, everything in terms of colours, textures. Basically, the newest gen is like watching a movie. But that's the problem. We keep debating and debating, but there's no general opinion on this. So now, we get to actually pit our hosts against each other today and see who wins. Not only who the best debater is in terms of the I Got Gameplay podcast, but also in terms of what platform was the best, or is the best, should I say. So we're going to do so by talking about a few games that have been released on the Nintendo Entertainment System, the Sega Master System, the Sega Genesis, and also the stuff that's been, the titles that have followed on concurrently over to next-gen consoles. And then we're going to allow everybody to sort of do their own, I would say sort of a 5-minute pitch for what they feel is the best game out there, or what the best experience was, and what gen of system was their favourite. Now, by doing so, let's throw it onto the board. I'm going to give you guys a question here in terms, when you think of retro, what does that mean to you? What does that say?
That's whenever games were good.
Okay, Lee, that's whenever games are good. What about you, Payton?
I mean, retro is very subjective, so I mean, I guess that's why you're asking the question. Retro is something from the past that you're looking at in a nostalgic way, and to say that that's just good, I mean, I guess maybe you're just big on nostalgia. There's lots of that can be appreciated from today's stuff and even the future. I think that's made and now and going forward is based on what we've learned through those retro years.
That's a very good point. What about you, Travis? What if I say to you retro, what does that say to you?
I'm with Lee on this one. It is when gaming was good, but the thing is, that's when games were actually games. They weren't really experiences like they are now. It's just when it was actually kind of fun.
Miguel, what about you?
I'm going to side with Payton. I think when you talk retro, you're usually talking about whatever era you grew up in. I mean, retro is different in a lot of people's minds. I mean, some people grew up in the 2000s, and to them, that's considered retro. You know, to them, PS2 is considered retro now. I mean, we all grew up around when the SNES and the NES were out, so to us, that's retro. I think it just all depends on the age group. And yeah, we're probably going to have a fonder memory about the older times, but we also got to keep in mind that was during a time where we were growing up. You know, it's that old rose-tinted mindset of, you know, your childhood was always better in the past than it was in the present. So I'm not one to immediately say games were better back in the day. I think games were just different.
Okay. What about you, Stephen? If I say to you retro, what does that bring up in regards to your opinion?
If I'm thinking of retro, I'm thinking of my childhood and just spending my time on my handheld with all my friends playing Pokemon and stuff like that. I mean, everyone's got their own idea of what retro is, and it's normally when you grew up. I don't necessarily think games were better back then. I think we were just easier to please. But yeah, retro just reminds me of my fun childhood time playing games.
Okay, Sean, what about you? What does retro say for you?
Retro is before I reach puberty.
Good, that's a good point. So when we look at the term of retro, we can actually agree that it's a precursor to things that are coming, like to this day and age. It's a blueprint, so to speak. It's what we use as a markup to follow on from, and we continue to do so. So let's talk about the term next gen quite quickly. Next gen. Give me the term next gen. What do you think of it? And Lee, we'll start with you again. What's your opinion on next gen?
I really think when I hear next gen, it's going to be something that's going to blow my mind away. It's going to be the next big step in what's going to evolve games into the future.
Very much so. And ladies and gents, if you want to join in on the debate that we're having at the moment in terms of retro versus new, you can do by calling us on 760-512-7247. That's 760-512-7247. If you don't want to actually waste money on a call, you can give us a call using the Skype button that's above the player. So let's continue on that. In terms of next gen, Travis, what would you actually use in terms of the next gen? What term? How would you just best describe that term?
One word: confusion. And let me explain. We have all these new systems coming out, and they're more than just systems anymore. They do more than just play games. You can watch TV shows on it. You can instantly stream movies. You can video chat on them now. In game-wise, again, it's an experience. It doesn't incorporate what fun was. There's fun games, but we're heading into a time when graphics are more important than gameplay and substance.
That's extremely true. That's a very valid point. Miguel, what about you?
I'm not going to so much disagree with Travis, but I am going to just put a little bit of not a hashtag, but a bit of my. I'm going to add to that. In terms of graphics being over gameplay, I think we're hitting that apex because with the next generation consoles coming out, I don't see much of a difference in terms of graphics. I think that big leap forward in terms of graphics we've pretty much hit with this generation. I think right now it's going to be more polish and maybe an expansion on other assets like AI and just gameplay scope. But to me, in terms of next gen, I think it's just a natural evolution of the technology. I think as consoles incorporate new hardware into their systems, it just expands more and more. It's a natural evolution of it, When consoles went from cartridges to CDs, you had consoles giving you the ability to play music CDs on there, which was a neat feature. When DVD started to become acceptable as a format, you started to see consoles doubling as DVD players. When online started to become a facet into consoles, you started to see certain consoles allow for web access. And I think as the technology evolves around video games just kind of suck them up just out of necessity. It's there. We might as well take advantage of that.
Well, we're looking into the battle at the moment to find the new all-in-one system. Because what console manufacturers are doing nowadays, especially if you look at Microsoft and Sony's for into next-gen console market, they're trying to make other systems obsolete. Because they're not just competing with games consoles now. They're competing with your TV. They're competing with your Skybox. They compete with your cable provider. They're trying to amalgamate everything into an all-in-one system, and that's going to continue. I think that trend will continue a long time after probably we've gone and left the planet. So, Sean, what about yourself? What would you say in terms of, if I use the term next gen, what would come into your mind?
More for first-person shooters. There you go. And we got new better hardware, isn't it?
Very much
tech
so.
Stuff myself. I always look forward to the new tech, the new RAM, it's all about memory, isn't it? The next generation, it's all about going to be faster speeds, faster loading, faster pixels, faster frames per second.
Sort of an ease of convenience, isn't it?
Yeah, as long as it stops the people, developers bitching about lack of power and whatnot. Keep them happy, innit?
Exactly. What about you, Peyton? What's your opinion? If I use the term next gen, what comes to your mind?
Well, starting with this generation we're in now, not what we had before, but the Xbox 360, the PS3, and the Wii. I don't think there's much further we can get as far as graphical innovation. That's really what we've been doing with each generation we go next. We're able to get higher resolution. We're able to move from sprites into full 3D polygons and all these other things. We can't go much further with that. Games really look as good as they're going to look. People see these trailers for new games being put out on PS. It's like, oh my god, it's so beautiful. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, this looks exactly like PS3. I really don't see that much of a difference. What I think we really need to see more going these next future systems is more innovation. And the only thing I'm seeing as far as innovation from people is coming from Nintendo. I mean, they did it with Wii, and they didn't really hit the mark with it. Oh well, they are trying at least. Wii U, I think they got it. They got a really cool little thing here. It's delayed catching on, but I think it is going to be catching on. And by the time we get to the next gen after that, I don't see what these other guys are going to do to try to keep up. I mean, the Kinect is Microsoft's way of trying to innovate gameplay and get people more involved. That's a miserable failure, more than the Wii was. PS3, they're trying to do some cool things with their social aspects, but I don't know if that's really the way people want to go. In that sense, I think they're disconnecting people more because I miss being able to play with people next to me, not connecting with people who are all the way across the country. I want to be with the people that I'm actually playing with.
I totally agree with you, Mike.
So, moving on from that debate now, let's talk about a couple of games that have actually been out on like the retro platforms and moved on to the next gen platform. So, let's talk about Sonic. For instance.
I'm hurting.
It's a Sega mascot. For those of you who don't know, if you haven't seen our Sega episode of I Got Gameplay, Sonic was introduced as Sega's attempt to combat Mario. And when he first came out, he was I would actually call it a platformer. He was a very fast speed, and the design of the Sonic, like the levels in terms of games, were great. But then something happened. Now, Miguel, do you want to fill us in on that?
Basically what happened is they hit 3D and just have never been able to really evolve in the 3D aspect, you know. Sonic Adventures was okay because it was the first, and surprisingly enough, still to this day, I would consider maybe the most polished, although you can make an argument for Sonic Adventure 2. I've never played that, but just since then, they've never really been able to hit that aspect. And to be fair, in terms of Sonic, I understand why, because Mario was able to move into the 3D space because of his gameplay. His gameplay was very exploration-based. It was very slow and methodical, whereas for something like Sonic, you know, to develop 3D worlds that can cater to that kind of fast movement, that just kind of run around gameplay, it's not the easiest to do. And when you do that, when you move into 3D, you kind of do end up falling into the Mario platformer formula. It just is what it is, you know, it just happens to be.
Yeah.
And also, you can also attribute that to all of the side characters that have been brought in, all the ridiculous stories. I mean, I remember we talked about the whole bestiality aspect with Sonic the Hedgehog 2006.
Yes.
Basically. And it's just, Sonic to me always reminded me of like an old 80s rock band, you know. They had their massive peak early on in their career, then they experimented, then they died off, then they tried coming back.
Then he did loads of drugs.
Now they're just kind of there, but no one really pays too much attention for them. They're kind of just, you know, laying low and just doing little gigs here and there. That's kind of what Sonic's become. You know, he's kind of doing his thing, and he's making a lot of money off his older work, you know. That's basically what's been keeping Sonic afloat is, hey, you know, these games were great back in the 90s. You know, why don't you give these a play? Don't worry about that more recent stuff. We'll just kind of pretend that didn't happen.
So basically he's David Bowie.
I like David Bowie.
Yeah, but his new material sucks ass. So yeah, we're looking at that character, and when you're looking at both retro and next gen, what would you say? So we'll start with you, Miguel, as you've sort of hit the nail on the head on this. You're saying retro, correct?
In terms of Sonic the Hedgehog, yeah, his retro days were very, very strong. You know, the way his games were made, 2D made it a lot easier to pull some of that stuff off. I mean, I remember reading an interview where they talked about, you know, if you tried to remake some of the levels in Sonic the Hedgehog, into a 3D aspect, all the elements and all, the levels would be too big. You wouldn't be able to pull them off with the current generation consoles because those levels were 2D, but they were huge. They were very long levels and very tall levels. So to pull that off, you'd have to have levels on the level of something like a Skyrim, just to be able to get all that into it. And that, I think, would just bog down the player. I think they would just get too overwhelmed.
Okay, let's go with you, Lee. Do you concur or do you have a counterpoint?
I concur, because one thing that really comes to my mind is they did it in Sonic Generations.
Yes.
It wasn't the most amazing game in the world, but to my surprise, it was well received by a lot of the hardcore Sonic enthusiasts. But at the end of the day, I will always argue that the heyday was in 2D. The jump to 3D, yes, that kind of did follow the Mario stereotype, but Mario did it very well. And Sonic Adventure was a good game, and Adventure 2. But from there, he's kind of fallen from grace. But that doesn't take away from the fact you can always throw in a good old Sonic game on the Genesis or one of the many remakes and HD releases he's had over the years, and you could still enjoy it for what it was.
Very true. Let's move on to you, Sean. What do you think? Do you concur or do you have a counterpoint?
Oh God, retro for the win. Bloody, oh man, I do not like this new generation of Sonic the Hedgehog. Although Sonic the Hedgehog 4 was pretty good, and Sonic Generations was really good as long as you didn't play as a 3D Sonic.
Okay, what about you, Travis? Do you concur?
I've retro all the way. I mean, on my bio on the Fanboys Anonymous website, I went on and said that I'm a big fan of the Sonic 16-bit era games. I mean, 1 through 3, Sonic Knuckles, Sonic CD, what? Those are the best games that ever came out in Sonic's history. Oh, and by the way, for all you David Bowie fans, it's a god-awful small affair.
What about you, Stephen? Do you concur or do you have a counterpoint?
Well, for me, I actually got introduced to Sonic in the 3D realm, went back to play the 2D games, and personally, I'm a fan of Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 over most of the titles, and I think Sonic Generations did a fantastic job of bringing to life the whole point of running through a level at the top speed and trying to reach the goal. So personally, I enjoy the current generation of Sonic, and maybe that's because I didn't grow up on it like everyone else did, but personally, I'm a Sonic fan for the 3D levels. The only real 2D game that I've got into more than any others was Sonic and Knuckles.
So would you say like next gen is probably the best for you, the current gen format, the 3D games?
I think it's going to be determined on how Sonic Lost World does. I think they hit the nail on the head with Sonic Generations as far as how the gameplay is meant to be. So it really depends on what this game looks like and how the fans receive it, because it's the Sonic diehards that dictate where the game goes in the long run.
Can I just say one thing real quick? I've always thought that the one game out there that really had a gameplay style that I think would have been really helpful, it would have been the closest thing we would have come to a 3D Sonic that would have helped, was I don't know if you guys ever played Beautiful Joe. I think that type of 3D gameplay on a 2D plane but going in and out would probably have been the best choice for a modern day Sonic game, because it would have kept him on a 2D plane, but it would have had enough 3D on it where it wouldn't have felt like a complete 2D ripoff. I would have loved to have seen a Sonic game built on the Beautiful Joe level engine.
Yeah, that probably would have been a great idea.
That is an interesting concept. Great idea.
Miguel, you need to work for Sega. Oh, well, lack of trying. So let's go on to another character now, Mario. So we'll start this time with you, Lee.
That's quite a topic to start out with.
I want to talk about, because he's literally gone from strength to strength. He has stayed with the same house, so to speak, because he hasn't gone on different platforms or different consoles. He's managed to stay with Nintendo, so that's probably why they managed to do so well with putting him over onto next gen platform. But yeah, let's go for that. Retro or next gen?
Man, the Mario Galaxy games are amazing. They are a lot of fun. Even Mario 64, which was an amazing game, but if I was stuck with one or two Mario titles, it would probably be Mario World and Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island. Those were the cream of the crop, in my opinion, but that doesn't take away from the fact that he's still doing an amazing job to this day, so I gotta go with retro.
Okay. What about you, Miguel?
This is a bit of a toss-up, but I'm going to have to agree with retro, and the reason is when you look at the different Mario titles he put out during his retro run, when you look at how different each iteration is in terms of gameplay between Super Mario to Super Mario 2, I'm talking about the American version, not the Japanese version, from 2 to 3, from 3 to World, from World to Yoshi's Island, all the games played really differently, but still had that core Mario style to it. When you get into Super Mario 64 and on, they're very well made games, incredibly well. I mean, they're amazing, but they do kind of all play about the same. When, you look at the difference between Super Mario 64 to Super Mario Sunshine. Aside from the water pack element, there's not much of a difference in terms of gameplay. It very much plays like Super Mario 64.
Yeah.
When you look at the jump between Super Mario Sunshine to Super Mario Galaxy, yeah, the level designs are more intricate, but it still plays just about the same. It's still that same familiar style. So I'm going to give it to retro only because I think they took more risks with tweaking gameplay as opposed to nowadays where I still enjoy the games, but it's more for a familiarity standpoint.
Very much so. That's a good point. Sean, what about you?
Well, as I grew up playing the original Mario Brothers, and to this very day I still play Mario Brothers, the original, I gotta go with retro. Just because I love those little red pixels. I think Nintendo did a wonderful job with that game, and these new Super Mario Brothers games try to be what that was, but there's too many, I don't know, too many colours for my liking.
Okay.
But yeah, I class Mario 64 as retro as well, and that's my favourite 3D Mario game.
Okay, what about you, Travis?
Oh, God, I was afraid you were going to come to me. I really, really don't know, because I love all things Mario, and it's hard for me to decide which direction to go, because I love both sides of it. I love the retro Mario games. I even like the new ones. And I even deeply enjoy the new Super Mario Brothers games that they come out with, because they are a throwback to what Mario was like before it went all 3D and everything. And I'm not discrediting the 3D Mario games. I think those are fucking awesome. Both Mario Galaxy games. I love Super Mario Sunshine, which sadly I've never finished, but I need to track down a copy. But if I have to choose, I might have to say retro, because again, I mean, technically you can say the Mario Galaxy games are now considered retro, because it's on a last-gen system. And I also love Super Mario World. Mario 64 was fucking awesome. I'm going to have to say retro.
Okay, what about you, Stephen?
As far as it goes, I mean, Super Mario Land was always my favorite Mario title. The only 3D one I've really enjoyed wasn't necessarily Mario himself, but more Luigi with Luigi's Mansion. So I'm going to have to go with retro.
Great. Okay. And now we're going to do the last one here in terms of...
Hold up. You skipped me for Sonic, you're going to skip me for Mario too?
Sorry,
it's fine. I can summarize. It's fine. I can actually surmise my Sonic thoughts into my Mario argument too, and that is Mario has been able to transition very well into so many different things, which is what Sonic was able to do. Sonic was not able to make the transition into 3D. Sonic was not able to make a racing game. Sonic was not able to make a good snowboarding game. He was able to make a good pinball game. I'll say Sonic Spinball was a really fun, unique type of Sonic game. But other than that, it hasn't worked out too well with the Hedgehog. Mario, on the other hand, pretty much anything this guy touches is great. Board games, racing games, tennis, so help me out here, guys. I'm sure there's other stuff I'm not thinking of. But
Mario Party.
Football.
Party.
Football. Party is what I meant by board games. But
the soccer, yeah.
Yeah, it's important. But as far as where Mario is now compared to then, I have to actually go with the newer versions because the older versions they're great. I would never shit on a single Mario game. I don't think Mario, as far as his core skills, has ever missed a step. Every single one of those is great, solid games that you can have fun playing. I'm going with you because you're taking all the things that made the old ones great, and then you have the newer look, the newer technologies, added enemies, added story features as opposed to before where there was absolutely none. At least now there's kind of cool things. Like on the newest Super Mario Brothers Wii U, when you're going on the map and as you progress further and further, you see Peach's castle slowly get enveloped by smoke more and more, and then she completely gets taken over and surrounded by lava as Bowser completely takes over. Really, really awesome stuff. So I have to go with new, just because of how varied Mario has become, and just based on the fact that, as I was saying at the very beginning of the show, it took everything they learned from Retro and is using it to continue into the future and make it better.
Very much so. That you make a very valid point on that one, because they're using, as we stated before, they're using it as a blueprint. So let's now go on to, I was going to basically use one terminology like going to Final Fantasy, but let's use the term RPGs. Retro versus new. So we'll start with you, Travis.
Okay. Well, a lot of things have progressed since the NES days with the original Final Fantasy game, and they progressively have gotten better. I mean, perhaps the whole RPG thing could be best compared to like a fine bottle of wine. It sits there and it ages, and as it ages, it gets better. So I think in terms of RPG, I'm going to have to go with new, modern.
Okay. What about you, Miguel? What would you actually go for RPGs?
That's a toss-up because, I think just in terms of gameplay variety, I may have to go with the modern stuff. As much as I like the older things, and I think the core gameplay was a lot stronger in the retro days. I think there's a lot that can be said about a lot of the improvements that modern games have, and I'm gonna go with retro on. I'm gonna go with not retro, modern on that regard.
Okay. What about you, Stephen?
As far as RPG games go, I think the modern day got them beat hands down. I mean, as far as look-wise, they're a lot better, obviously, but they're able to do more. The limits are off, and they can expand and just keep growing it. Some of the games that are coming out today are just ridiculously big. I mean, I can't even imagine what's going to be on the next generation. It's definitely the modern era for me when it comes to RPGs.
Okay, and Lee?
I've been sitting here thinking this entire time. Man, in terms of retro, that is just a matter of perspective. And see, I don't consider specifically 7, 8, and 9 to be retro games because I was already playing older games at that time, and I don't really find that the original PlayStation is retro. But in all honesty, we have to consider that the PlayStation titles would be considered retro as well. So there doesn't seem to be any discussion there. Final Fantasy started out pretty slow, and it picked up, and it got amazing. The Super Nintendo games, regardless if you go back now and what your experience might be, they really were amazing games. And even removing the rose-tinted goggles, as we discussed earlier, they're still fun games. They're solid RPGs in their own right. And then we get into 7, which had the groundbreaking graphics, which look like Legos now. But it had an amazing story. 8 added to that. And 9 was just, it was a nerdy orgasm, culmination of the entire series to that point. And it was amazing. Don't get me wrong, I love 10. I still play Final Fantasy 11 online. I enjoyed 12, but not as much. 13 was a solid game, but hands down, we have to go with Retro.
That's very much so. That's true. Okay, Sean.
I'm I'm on the fence for this one. I started playing RPGs with Pokemon. So the earlier generation of Pokemon is my favorite, but I've recently started playing proper RPGs like the Final Fantasies, Lost Odyssey, and all those, which I don't know which one, so I'm just going to leave it there.
Okay, Payden, what about you?
Now, this is actually what probably could have skipped before, but since you called on me, I'm actually kind of shocked that everyone's going modern, because generally when you talk to people who like RPGs, they're so adamant about the Nintendo era, because that was what people consider the golden era of RPGs. Me personally, though, my least favorite gameplay style that exists is turn-based combat. I absolutely cannot stand it. I get so bored, and it makes me lose interest in the entire game, no matter how great the other aspects of the game may be. So for me, as we progress with RPGs and we've gotten more into the action RPG style, that's what's gravitated me towards. I can get much more into a game like Skyrim, and yes, I'm going to say this, I know it's going to piss people off, Zelda, that I consider an RPG as well. I got to go with modern.
You just made Sean Mitchell just get extremely angry. He's probably woken up now going, someone called Zelda an RPG, I know it.
That should be a debate all in itself for a future show if Zelda is RPG. But I'll just throw my 2 cents into it. I don't think it's really considered an RPG, but the simple fact is you're not really leveling up your character at all. Because that's what you do a lot in RPGs, is loading up your characters to make them stronger.
Now you're not
really
getting
see that in Zelda games.
Yes, you do. You're not getting a number that's making you stronger, but you're getting more hearts, you're getting more items that are giving you all these different powers. Your character is getting stronger.
Well, that's true. True, yeah.
I always go
that's
with the experience point aspect of it. Now, you have to consider, too, that the lesser-known Zelda 2, The Adventures of Link, you did get experience points and your stats did level up, like your magic, your physical attack, and your life.
Yeah.
So there is a blurred line there.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, we're not going to get too deep in this now, though. Sorry I brought it up.
No.
Not this time.
So, segueing from that, Stephen, what about yourself?
I already answered that
You
question.
did, didn't you? Thought you did.
Yeah.
Sorry, apologies.
Being on the piss.
Yeah, pretty much, I think. Right, so now what we're going to do, guys, because as you've known, the general consensus, if you're looking at platformers, if you're literally looking at RPGs, we're still on the same wavelength for us. Retro, it's been great for those platforming titles, but you do get RPGs where, so like the general consensus of this board, so for instance, is on the modern side of things. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to give each of you, I was going to say 5, but I think we'll do, see how much time we've got left. I think we can actually do 10 minutes. So I'm going to give you 10 minutes, each of you, to make a viewpoint, to try and sway everybody else here, and then we'll basically congregate at the end to say yay or nay, which is the best. So now we'll go for you, Lee. Oh, before you make that, you go for your point, Lee. Just want to say you can call in 760-512-7247. That's 760-512-7247. Give us a call. Let us know your opinion on this debate. What do you think? RPGs versus modern? Do you not RPGs? So I'm going everywhere. Retro versus modern. What you think is the best? And if you don't want to call us using that number, you can actually call us using the Skype button by clicking on that, and you'll go immediately on air to actually talk to our panel of hosts here. So yeah, Lee, take it away.
Well, all this talk about retro gaming has got me thinking about a few experiences I had. I wanted to give a shout out to a good friend of mine, Andrew Truvian from Final Fantasy 11. He sent me a disc golf disc that has the old school Samus S from Super Metroid on it. It was amazing. And also, I was thinking about another good friend of mine who was a few years younger than me. Sadly, he was at work, so he doesn't have the chance to call in right now. His name's Kaiser, and he's one of the, he's been playing games for a long time, and we had a conversation once. This was many years back, and I was mentioning Ninja Gaiden, or Ninja Gaiden, however you wish to pronounce it. And he said, "Oh, yeah, I've played that game." I'm like, "Oh, you did? Have you beaten it?" He said, "Oh, yeah. Yeah, I beat that game." And I said, "Oh, what system was it for?" He said, PlayStation 2. I immediately erupted into, a narcissistic, nerdy laughter, thinking, no, I'm not talking about that game. I'm talking about the one for NES, which is notorious for being one of the most difficult games. Well, I didn't know this, but after our conversation, he really got into this whole retro vibe. He went and picked up an NES and a bunch of games that he probably played when he was younger, but never really had a chance to master. And one of the days, he invited me down his house, and he showed me Ninja Gaiden. He went through the entire game without dying, and I have to admit, it is one of the most godly things I've ever seen.
Okay. So you got anything else that you want to put forward? Because you've got literally 10 minutes.
Well, I don't know if I need 10 minutes, but even considering the rosy glasses of nostalgia, I really do think that we all had something special with the earlier generations of video games. Even to this day, if somebody picked up a Super Nintendo or a Sega Genesis, respectively, they could have a lot of enjoyment from a game. And if you even see the industry moving towards more of the social gaming where people play a game for 5 minutes while riding a bus, you can do a lot of that stuff with the older games, too. Sure, they were more difficult. They had to do that to make it worth your money. But at the end of the day, starting from, I like to cite Metal Gear Solid as being the first popular game that was an interactive story. I love the game. Don't get me wrong. Metal Gear Solid was amazing. It blew my mind. But that's where it started to step into the interactive, movie. And that basically culminated with games like Last of Us in this generation, where those games are just, little bits of action punctuated with a storyline. When you throw in a Mega Man game and you push start, you pick who you're going to go fight, and then within seconds you're fighting for your life. That is an amazing game, and those experiences are something that thankfully aren't lost due to the retro crowd or the indie crowd. That they're keeping a lot of that retro alive, and it's a wonderful thing. But if you really want to know what a good game is, you're definitely going to have to take a step back and play some retro titles.
Okay. Let's go next with you, Travis.
Oh, man. 10 minutes. Well, let's see what I can do here for 10 minutes. Yeah, I guess what I can really start with when I was a child and just being so entranced with the Atari 2600. And I still have that system today and the box full of games for that system. And I love digging it out every now and then, just reminiscing about the past, about how great life was before everything got too complicated. Because that's how I view what today is. It's still very complicated. And as we progressed as gamers, we played systems like the Nintendo Entertainment System, the Sega Master System, eventually Sega Genesis, and 3DO.
Don't cough.
And
that was an awesome system. It was just really expensive.
Awesome system, but come on. The games didn't have too many great games, but I digress. But the thing is, we've just gotten older, and even when we've gotten older and we're still playing the new modern games, we have to take a step back and think of how we got here. And if it wasn't for the times when we had the Nintendo Entertainment System and playing Super Mario Brothers, which single-handedly saved the video game industry, give credit where it's due. And we all just love and admire the games we used to play as children. And I can safely say for anybody out there who is a retro fanatic such as myself, who collects old video games, you get that wonderful feeling when you pick up a copy of Star Fox on Super Nintendo, and you think back to the day that you first played it, and you get all these wonderful memories that stay with you pretty much until the day you die. And without retro gaming to let us know where we've gotten to in this day and age, that's something to definitely think about. I'll always be a retro fanatic. Not saying I'm going to stop playing new modern games, because I'm always going to be playing new stuff as well. But I will always have my heart where it belongs, and that's in the past of these great game systems, including the NES, Genesis, Super Nintendo. And yes, I still play Sega CD and 32X. I know they're not the most popular video game machines ever to existed, but at the same time, I have some really great memories. In fact, some of my greatest memories are with my late brother, who I lost a couple of years ago. He hate to be a Debbie Downer. He committed suicide a couple of years ago, and we have so many really great memories. I have so many great memories of playing these games with them. And I can remember the time I went down to the his bedroom in the basement, and he had the TurboGrafx 16 hooked up with TurboGrafx CD, and we were playing games like It Came from the Desert, which is still one of the coolest games I've ever played. Is it my favorite? No, but I still love playing it whenever I get a chance to. And all these other great times I've spent with him, playing Atari, playing Nintendo, Sega. These are memories that I always will keep with me until the day I die. And that's what retro games should be remembered as, when it was considered the golden age of video games.
Very, very good points. Okay, Stephen.
Hey. As far as retro versus modern goes, personally, I don't really have a preference, because I don't think there's it's necessarily one's better than the other. I think it more comes down to, but there's good games and there's bad games, because there's plenty of times where I've had a great nostalgic view of a video game, gone back to play it in the modern era and gone, Jesus Christ, this is shit. I mean, recently I picked up ECW Hardcore Revolution from the collectibles place from across the road, and that might be the most god-awful pro wrestling game that I've ever come across.
That was made by Activision, wasn't it?
No, Acclaim.
That was it.
Yeah, Acclaim. So yeah, I picked that up from there the other day, and it's always gonna be a matter to me if there's some good games and some bad games. I've always got my best memories come from playing retro games, but that's because you always look back on being a child and having great fun as a kid. I mean, my favorite game of all time is Pokemon Red and Blue. Not necessarily because it's a better game than the newer ones, but it's just I had so much fun at the time hooking up a link cable with my friends and battling and trading. I don't know how I can stretch this out into 10 minutes, but...
Take as much time as you... Basically, if you can't do 10 minutes, then have to, don't worry. Just tell us what your opinion is, basically.
But as far as it goes, if I had to pick one, I'd say the modern era, because I'm still a gamer and I still enjoy it. And I'm enjoying seeing the progression of gaming. But it just comes down to some games transcend time, some don't, and I'm just a gamer in general, and I love all games no matter what era it comes from.
Okay, let's go on to you, Sean.
Hey, sorry about that. I might muted. Get on for me, I love the retro games. For me, the era was for me for the retro is 98. Was that when the N64 died out, or was that when it was just released? I can't remember. But it's whenever the N64 died. It's whenever the N64 died. That's when retro died for me. Because cartridges, God, I miss cartridges. When a game didn't work, all you had to do was take it out, give it a blow your console, put it back in, worked every time. Nowadays, disc scratch. You can't throw a disc. If you throw a disc, it's breaking into a million pieces. The amount of FIFAs I've gone through is unreal. So that's why I like retro, and I've got great memories playing games with my sister who doesn't play any games anymore because she's kind of grew out of it. So that leaves me with my kid brother who just kicks my ass every time in this new generation, but he still sucks at Mario Brothers to this day. So I'm pretty much done. And this generation sucked, and if the next generation is more first-person shooters, then that generation's going to suck as well.
Don't you have a Halo tournament that you do?
I do, but that's different. Because the winner of that tournament gets paid 450 quid before the Xbox One or PS3 launches, and we can spend that money on whatever. And I'm currently third, so...
Wow. Okay, Payden.
I forget who touched on this earlier, but I think one of the flaws of what we have on this panel here is that we all have the same relative childhood era of what systems we were into and what we're going to look back fondly with retro, and I think that may be skewing some of our ideas of what's better. I wish we had someone like Drew White on here because he's extra young and he can give a little bit more of a reflection on what was like growing up during the CD-based era. As far as where I lie on this, I mean, I'm like you guys. I grew up with a Sega Genesis. I grew up with a Nintendo Entertainment System. All my fondest memories in gaming pretty much come from playing Duck Hunt or playing NFL Blitz on 64 or playing Sonic versus Knuckles. They all go back to that, but when I just sit back and I look at games now and I look at games then, the games now are so much better. How on earth can you look at those games and be like, that's better? Like, sure, some of the actual gameplay elements were solid back then, but those have carried to now, and majority of the best games have either had an HD remake applied to them, or that same idea of a game has been transferred over into a new gameplay style. I mean, when you look at, who was it, Tony Mango, I believe you said, when he first looked at the trailer for the new Grand Theft Auto 5, and the only thought that came across his head was, oh my gosh, is this what games are like now? This is what games have evolved to? And he was just completely mind-blown and practically speechless about it. So if we can continue to see games do something like that, and like I was saying before, the only way I think they're going to do that is innovate the way you play, something beyond just the typical directional pad and joystick. I think they need to find something like that. And the problem is most things that they've tried to do that with have not worked out very good. I mean, going all the way back to the Activator, if we're going to talk about retro stuff, and the, whatchamacallit, the Power Glove. All of those things did not work out very well back then either. They're not working out now, so I don't know what they're going to do with that. I think some of the cooler things we're seeing now are like the Oculus. The Oculus is freaking awesome. I can't wait to get a chance to try one of those out. I believe they have some type of something that's going with the Oculus, some type of not Kinect, but some other motion-based system that follows your body movements. That I can only imagine is better than the Kinect. But
they're doing something for the Android that's based on the Kinect technology, but apparently it's far better.
Oh, fancy. What I hope to see, I miss cartridges. I liked cartridges because they looked nice stacked on a shelf next to each other. I miss the sound of cartridges rubbing against each other. You know what I mean? It was just such a fun sound when you pick up a stack of games and you're flipping through them like they're cars and they're just sliding against each other. Oh man, I'm gonna go play with some of my cartridges when I'm done here. You don't
that
get
really
that
hollow, loud plastic banging noise.
Mm-hmm. The discs don't have that. I mean, you got your little CD wallet booklets, and you can flip through the pages, and that's cool. They take up less space. I mean, it is kind of cool that I could take the CD wallet, fit 20 games in there, and it's only a little bit bigger than an old-school cartridge would have been. That's awesome. But the risks of what you get with discs as far as how easy they are to break, or even just, like, warp if you leave them in a warm room for too long or anything like that, it's not worth it. I am looking forward to the digital age when we no longer have any type of physical medium to work about, and I know there's huge arguments for it. I forget if we've had an episode based on that or not. If not, then it's definitely one we should consider. We did, right? We did that episode.
I think we touched on it because we were talking a lot about the Xbox One at one point, and with that we were talking a lot about the digital age and the fact that the whole DRM situation is causing a huge load of conflict, but it could be the way that games are going. So we did touch it lightly, but I think we need to sort of delve into it a little bit more.
I fully support it, and I believe your brother would have a huge argument against it because he's really big on having something physical in his hands that he's allowed to do whatever he wants with and trade on and yada yada. I'm fine with it as long as the price reflects it. And I think a good example of that we've seen was the most recent expansion to New Super Mario Bros. U with Luigi U. If you bought it as a digital version, you only had to pay $20 for it. But if you went and bought the actual physical disc, it was $30. That's fair. So, I mean, I'm not going to pay $60 full price for a game if you're giving me a version that I can go and get a disc and then resell or do whatever I want with later on, hand it to my friend. But if you're offering me that same game for $45 or $50, I'm certainly open-minded to that. So, at this point in time, I'm still siding with modern. I mean, there are things I don't like about it, but there's things I don't like about games back then either. I think the only thing that they need to stay true to is keeping the best things of what made retro gaming great, which it's the only people doing that are Nintendo, and I hate to harp on that, but it really is. Sean is a big complainer about the first-person shooters. We've seen that age die down a little bit. There's not as many first-person shooters as there was like 4 or 5 years ago, where nearly every single big game coming out was a first-person shooter. I mean, now you're getting to see more open-world games and puzzle games become a little bit more to prominence. But
and more focused on story as well now.
And more focusing on story, and someone else was making a point about games being just interactive movies, and that's very true, but you know what? There's a place for that. And that was something that didn't really exist way back in the day. Somewhere you could just sit back, zone out, get immersed in a really cool story, shut the lights out, get a soda next to you, drink a beer, do whatever you gotta do to relax, and just move a few sticks once in a while and enjoy the story playing of it. And it holds your attention a little bit better because you are getting those little bit of involved moments. However, that should not dominate gaming either. And that's a mistake that I think a lot of developers are doing these days. But, once again, Nintendo staying true to those formulas that make those games great. That's why we're seeing, DuckTales is on all systems, but it was originally a plan for there. Rayman Legends. Rayman Legends is possibly the most fun game that's out this year. It's not out yet, but I mean, when you played the Challenges app and if you played the demo of it, that game is absolutely freaking amazing. I cannot wait for the release of that. And in my opinion, that's a Game of the Year contender. We need to see more like that. But, I think I'm done.
Once again, we're on the 22-minute marks before the show ends. If you want to call in, you can do on 760-512-7247. That's 760-512-7247, and let us know where you on the whole retro versus modern debate. Now, I've basically left myself out of this argument for a reason, because I wanted to make sure that everyone got their arguments across in terms of the panel and see if anyone could actually change my mind. And truthfully, I'm kind of with Payton on this. Mistakes have been made to the point where companies learn from them. Without the Power Glove, there would be no Wii remote controls, you know. Without the Atari 2600, the ColecoVision, there probably wouldn't have been a Nintendo. Without the gaming crash of '89, there basically would have been no new systems coming out because no one was actually ready to take a risk. And the thing is, if you can learn from those experiences, if you can learn from everything that's happened in the retro years, you'll find that new game manufacturers will learn from those and will build bigger and better systems. As technology evolves, so will our gaming habits. In terms of nostalgia, in terms of how we as people basically play games, you do want to look back at the old style games. You know, I could tell you stories where my father basically purchased a Nintendo Entertainment System. For me, it was the first system I could actually call my own, and I remember playing Donkey Kong on that. And you know what I did? As soon as it came out for like 30 pence on the Wii U store, I purchased Donkey Kong so I could relive those nostalgic moments. There's room for that, but if you're looking at the whole retro versus new debate, the mechanics that these games had they're still around today. But you have to remember as well, if you look at AVGN, if you look at other gaming networks, they could show you a plethora of Nintendo Entertainment System games that were terrible. That were terrible. And we forget about those. We forget about the fact that we had a market that was extremely oversaturated with content. We had, as soon as it evolved to the Super Nintendo, I was literally itching to play my Super Nintendo Entertainment System. And the first game I held in my hands for that system was Super Mario World. And then when I finally made the jump from that to the N64 and then to the Nintendo GameCube, it got better and better for me. You know, when the PlayStation came around, I was immersed in Final Fantasy VII. I was immersed in the fact that how games could look so good, but they still maintained a lot of the core mechanics that games had before it, because developers learn. You know, nowadays, we've kind of been spoilt for choice, because we've got the new Xbox One coming out, we have the Xbox 360 that we currently have, the PlayStation 3, the Nintendo Wii, and the Wii U. I'm still playing my Nintendo Wii now. You know, I have my Nintendo Wii in front of me. It's, you know, locked away in my room, and I pick it up and I pick my Wii motion controller that I can play on both consoles, and I play through a game. I play a simplistic game like Animal Crossing, and I can be entertained for hours. You know, it's not about the experience, the content, so to speak, or the way that the games have been played, but it's about, for most people, when they think retro, it's their experiences, it's the things that they've had. Everyone has a story, but I can tell you like a million different stories that I'm having at the moment. My kids who are probably going to look back at my gaming experiences with them and see that as retro when they get to see the newest console out, and then their kids, and then their kids. So in the end, if you look at the retro versus modern debate, I would literally have to go with modern, because your experiences will still exist, but gaming goes from strength to strength, no matter how you look at it. Because, as I've said before, these are templates. You know, once a new game comes out that wows you, it's probably based on an existing template, just as movies are based on past movies and past stories. I think the saying that always is said in terms of storytelling is that no story is original. Everything is based on something else. And that can say the same thing about gaming. Every gaming platform, every game is based on a game that came before it. So, in a sense, with this day and age, we probably don't consider certain things as groundbreaking, where the next guy will, you know. And all we need to do is evolve with the times, but at the same sense, if things get a little bit too much, if games get a little bit too awkward for you, or if Microsoft decides to fuck people over again, you can at least pick up your Nintendo gamepad and say, hey, it's time to experience some more of those nostalgic moments from my Nintendo Entertainment System. And just think back. So again, ladies and gents, you can call us on 760-512-7247 and put your opinion across, or you can click on the Skype button. We're in 17 minutes left of the show, and now I want to talk to the co-host here and get the final decision. So the final decisions will start with you, Lee. What was your final decision?
I still have to go with retro, because at the end of the day, you have to consider the content of the games that were released for a system within a time period. Nothing, in my opinion, compares to the quality of games that were released for the Super Nintendo. So, retro for me.
Apologies, Miguel, sorry. I know that I left you out, so please, have your say.
Yeah, I was wondering when I was going to have my chance to speak out on this. I'll make it quick, because apparently you've got your thing going on right now. There's not much I can really offer. I mean, everybody pretty much kind of said the big, important stuff in it. I will say two aspects of modern gaming that I think are worrisome, and I think two aspects that I don't agree with. One is how much of a business gaming has become. I mean, it was a business in the late 80s and the early 90s, obviously, but I do tend to notice you were able to get away with a lot more in terms of the different variety of games you were able to release. I mean, during those 2D, and even I would say even into the PlayStation era, you really could release a game about anything, and there was a good chance that it would make you some money. You know, it seemed like a much more open market, whereas once the PS2 era and into the 360 era came about, you started to see more big-budget companies coming in and kind of overseeing things to the point where a lot of games nowadays are built either to capitalize on the success of a certain other game, and a lot of the more risque titles, the ones that take more risks when it comes to gameplay, that don't follow a certain template, usually are just shoved under the they're just brushed under the rug. They're not really paid attention to well. And they end up finding their niche, but it's over time, and usually it's at the expense of any sort of money making, and that is unfortunate. And I think, to be honest, I know this has probably been said before, I think most games nowadays hold the hands of the gamer way too much. I'm going to relay a story that I heard on a different podcast that one of the hosts on there had mentioned. One of the guys I listened to recently was taking care of a much younger relative of his. And they decided as a fun thing to load up an NES emulator to play some Super Mario Brothers. And it had been the first time this younger kid had actually played Super Mario Brothers. So he booted up Super Mario Brothers, handed the kid the controller, and you know that the opening screen where it's all black, but it just has, the little symbol of Mario and the number of lives. It's the screen before the levels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He said how his younger relative, for about a minute or so, was just kind of staring at the screen. He was just kind of sitting there, and after a while he was like, what are you doing? Why aren't you playing? He goes, well, when's the tutorial going to pop up? And I think that's something.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of a new trend in gaming that I don't agree with, having grown up in the earlier eras. There was a time where you just kind of started playing a game. You kind of went in. If it had a manual, you read it, but it didn't seem like games today. It seems like games today kind of hold you by the hand and have you play the way they want you to play. I mean, Call of Duty is probably the biggest example. I mean, I personally, I have a funny story of my own. I saw a video of somebody who was playing the older version of Doom, the first Doom game, but it was modded to be more like a Call of Duty game, and it's so funny because the whole game just kind of leads you by the leg. It tells you where you're supposed to go. It gives you a little set amount of enemies to shoot. If you try to stray from the main pathway, it penalizes you by killing you. It's just, games today, I think, have sacrificed gameplay in terms of cinematics, and as a result have kind of, weakened a lot of gamers to the point where I don't see a lot of gamers being able to go back to those older games and play that style. Having said that, I think you still have those games. Mm-hmm. They're made a little bit more easier. They're made a little bit more forgiving. And maybe that's just me being an old man shaking a stick at the sky, but I do think that a lot of gamers have it way too easy nowadays with most modern games.
Okay, so after that, Miguel, so let's go to the rest of the panel here. Travis, what about you? After hearing what Miguel said, are you retro or modern?
I'm still with retro. And it's interesting that Miguel brings that up about how the kid was sitting there just staring at the screen, waiting for a tutorial to pop up. That's where I feel a little disenchanted by games today, because when people put a game in nowadays, they expect the game just to take you by the hand and tell you where you have to go in order to play the game. I miss the good old days when you actually had the game in front of you, and if you did not read the instruction manuals and you didn't know what you were doing, that was on you. Because I loved about...
What is the instruction manual but a written version of a tutorial? So what's the difference if you're actually interactive in it rather than reading it?
Because I don't want the game to, in the beginning, when I boot it up, to say, okay, press this button to jump, press this button to move, and all this other stuff. I mean, some of these tutorials are actually insulting your intelligence when you think about it. But what I really miss about these old games is you got to learn this stuff on your own. That's what made it a lot more fun. If you fucked up, you're like, oh, crap, I'll get to try it again. And you just keep progressing and learning as you go. Tutorials may be fine for some of the more advanced games, but generally, they kind of take me out of the experience. So that's why I like retro the best, because you learned as you went.
Okay. What about you, Sean?
I'm with retro because retro actually works. With modern day technology, kind of lets you down with internet problems, disk problems, laser problems, controller problems. You never used to get that back in the back in the days. Like I said, all you had to do was take the cartridge out, give it a blow, put it back in, works.
Okay, I think we're having problems with Stephen here. I don't know what's happened. I think his Skype's disconnected. Hopefully we'll get him back. Okay, Mike, what about you?
Well, first off, I just wanted to make sure that this made it into the episode. That is two NES games. Two random games I grabbed off the shelf, just in case you're curious. It's Rampage and Fester's Quest for the Nintendo Entertainment System. That was the sound that was just pleasing your ears there.
Mike, you're my hero.
Yeah, as far as the question that you proposed to me, I think I'm still going to stick with modern, but one thing I do just want to point on that they were saying about retro, I really miss the days of when I can put in a game, and if you wanted to play the game, you press start and you play the game. These days, one of the toughest things is just getting to the point where you're even playing the damn game. You got to sync a controller, and then you got to choose a profile, and then you got to get past the opening screen, and then you got to choose all these other freaking options just to get to the point where you're actually inside the game. You got to worry about a big problem I had. I brought my Wii U over to my friend's house. I have an HD TV. He does not. So I went over there and I plugged in the cables. We turned on the system. It doesn't just work on his TV. You have to change the settings inside the Wii U to be able to work over there. Now here's the thing. I can't change the settings on my Wii U because I can't see the settings screen because there's nothing coming up on the TV. So in order for me to be able to do that, I have to change the settings on my Wii U while I'm at my house, go navigate to the settings menu, change it to go over so it's streaming through the red, white, and yellow cables rather than the HDMI, and then bring it over. What
Can
a
you
pain
use
in
the
the
tablet,
butt.
though, to do that? Because I use my tablet. Oh, you didn't bring the tablet.
You could let me answer the question?
Yeah,
I could use my tablet because I brought it over and I was just going to use his tablet. And that was the second part of the problem. I couldn't sync his tablet because when you want to sync the tablet, it's not just a matter of pressing a button on the system and pressing a button on the tablet. You have to choose these little squares that represent all the different suits from like a playing card deck. Like there's the spade and there's a heart and there's the diamond. You have to choose some sort of freaky combination that they put up there and get it right in order to sync them. And once again, I couldn't sync the gamepad because I couldn't see those shapes appearing on the screen. So I was just stuck in this complete limbo where I could not get the system to work at all. And all I wanted to do was go over to my friend's house and show him DuckTales. So
that's annoying.
That's something that frustrates me. But aside from that, I think games have come so far. I think games... This generation have been a little stagnant. I think they really hit a peak last generation and has dropped a little bit. With all the hype that's going into this next, I think we might see it scoop up a little bit. I just hope for a little more originality. We're getting a little too safe with sequels, yearly sequels especially, and clones of games. I want to see a little bit more originality. That's the thing I think is lacking at this exact moment in time. And I guess that's my final argument on it.
Okay. So yeah, that's pretty much it on Payden's side. Miguel, what about you?
I'm going to make an argument for modern as well, mostly because I don't think we've really lost that retro aspect of it. It's not in the mainstream, obviously, but you do have people making retro games now still on PlayStation Network, on the Xbox Live Marketplace, even on the Android and iPads, on Apple stores, you still have those retro games that you can still go back to. And they're constantly re-releasing old retro titles. I think that with games nowadays, it is an evolution. We evolved from using cartridges to using CDs just because you could pull off more. We evolved to full-length cutscenes, from full motion video and from whatever little cutscenes we could pull off on those earlier titles. I remember games like Out of This World having cutscenes, and that was on the Super NES, Genesis actually.
Love that game. I was just going to agree with you because I love that game.
I mean, technology is always going to move forward, and things are going to evolve with the time. It just is how it is. So I don't look back and go, games were better back in the day compared to now. I mean, I guess in terms of the retro style of gameplay, it really is a kind of fish or fowl kind of thing, It's kind of the difference between, watching a silly B movie that you could just kind of pop in and just have fun with it over watching something like The Godfather, You know, sometimes I'm in the mood for watching something like Transformers, and sometimes I'm in the mood for watching something like The Godfather. You know, it's just two completely different facets. You know, do you want the engaging experience, which a lot of games do well, or do you want just the quick and easy, I'm going to, you know, put this in for a little bit and just have my fun with it? I will go back to my argument that I do think a lot of modern games nowadays are a little bit too easy. I think they're not so much easy as in they do too much for the gamer. I really do think that that's something that needs to stop. I think that's more of a facet of the business aspect of it. Like I said, going back to businesses getting involved, everything has to kind of be homogenized to appeal to everybody, and I think that's kind of that's a mistake. Like I said, I do love modern games nowadays, and knowing that I could always go back to those retro games is always fun too, but I'm willing to look forward, you know, if it means a more engrossing experience.
Okay, so that's Miguel's point of view on that one. And Stephen, last but not least, what's your opinion on this? Has any of us changed your mind, or are you still very much in terms of modern gaming?
Well, I'm not into modern gaming by a landslide. It's just I enjoy gaming. I enjoy good gaming, and both retro and modern have had their share of horrible games and their share of good games. There's something to be said for the simplicity of the retro gaming world where you could just plug and play. But I'm just enjoying the evolution of gaming, and I'm just going to continue to have fun being a gamer.
That's awesome. That's actually a very good saying. But today, retro has won out, I'm afraid. You know, we've had the majority of the panel hosts here who believe that retro was the best thing in gaming, and again, with this debate, it's never going to be something that could be won. It can be either way, depending on what sort of side of the fence you go for, and an argument can be made for both. But in this case, the war has been won on retro, and the debate has been discussed and been done for another day. So as we segue onto that, guys, let's go on to the plugs. So should we start with you, Mr. Payden?
Oh, yeah, that would be perfect, actually. I just want to push, guys, if you're listening to this in post, tune into Mega Powers Radio at megapowersradio.com. That's where this show and many other great shows air live. We have almost every single night filled with content going on here. If you're a wrestling fan, we got a post show for Monday Night Raw and Monday nights. We got Keeping Kayfabe, a show where me and Burhan are on, where we talk about a match from wrestling's past. Steven's there as well. I shouldn't disclude him. He was there this week, where we did Shawn Michaels versus Bret Hart's Iron Man match from WrestleMania 12. Was an awesome conversation we had about that. Sans a few technical difficulties we had with BTR. It happens once in a while. Live radio, you know. We got I Got Gameplay here every Saturday night. We got lots of stuff. Daceman show Wednesday nights, pay-per-view pre-shows on Sundays. Otaku Nation, if you're into anime and manga, you got Mike and Steven doing that as well. Lots of cool stuff. MegaPowersRadio.com, YouTube.com/MegaPowersRadio, and of course, you'll hear this address many times throughout these plugs, FanboysAnonymous.com, where majority of the shows are posted as an archive.
So there you go, ladies and gentlemen, on that one. So let's move on to another person in terms of what he's got to plug. Miguel, you're next.
I really don't have much to plug right now. Check out some of my art. Okay. Check out my articles on fanboysanonymous.com. It's 90s Kid Presents. I haven't posted anything up in a while just because I've been so burned out by work. But I'm hoping once my financial situation kind of evens out, after all the money I spent at the con, I can buy some new games and kind of get some more stuff up there. So just check out my older stuff, 90s Kid Presents on fanboysanonymous.com.
Okay. Stephen, what about yourself?
Yeah, if you go to the Twitter handle at UDMMA, I'm going to be hosting a new show called Unanimous Decision Mixed Martial Arts, and Stephen Wago for my YouTube channel, and I'm going to be doing lots of UFC and MMA content.
There you go. Travis?
Okay, Twitter is TravisGoss79. You can find me on Facebook at Travis.Goss.3. I got a YouTube channel working on episode 3 of Rose-Colored Reviews, where I talk about Muppet Babies. And email me at Travis.Goss@megapowersradio.com.
Awesome. And last but not least, Lee?
You can check out my YouTube channel, VGMaster337. It's just some gameplay footage. Also, I want to second you should definitely check out Travis's channel. I checked that out, and that was a good channel. So definitely stop over there and watch those.
Yeah, awesome. And I think that's everybody. Oh, no, Sean. Go for it, Sean.
Hey, check out my new post on YouTube, which has been uploaded today of Pokemon Ruby Episode 1. That is at Shaughnessy1989, so check my YouTube channel out. Check me out on Twitter, where you can send me death threats if you're a Garasiche fan, which is Shaughnessy2K37. And check my stuff out on Fanboys, which I won't be posting this month, well, next month, September, because of personal issues. I gotta see a shrink. But yeah, that's me, Mike. It's all on you now, boy.
And for myself, of course, check back on I Got Gameplay every Saturday at 8 PM on Mega Powers Radio. And also, make sure that you check out everything on Mega Powers Radio, as Payton's gone through in terms of content. We have everything here for you to enjoy, and a very diverse catalogue of radio shows. And last but not least, go to www.nerdgenius.com, www.fanboysanonymous.com as well. I've written an article quite recently on Anita Sarkeesian, because I think she's the worst thing on the planet. She's really the scum of the earth. In terms of what she's trying to do with her videos of damsels in distress, where she's saying that she's putting an unbiased opinion in terms of gaming, but then just goes on a huge rant about why she thinks women are being demoralised. You also check out an article from Samantha Jenings on fanboysanonymous.com talking about why she is a gamer and she doesn't like to be called girl. You know, she plays games just like the rest of us, and being identified as something like that is not how women actually want to see themselves. They want to just be gamers like the rest of us. Of course, we shouldn't be defined by age, sex, or gender. And check back on my YouTube channel, www.youtube.com/TheNerdGenius, because I've won my battle with Nintendo. It's over. I got the videos restored thanks to YouTube, not thanks to Nintendo of Japan, who attempted to get my channel shut down because they're a-holes and really wanted to basically use my content and put a claim on my content when they had no right to do so. So check back as well for Movie File, which is starting next week again. So I'll be continuing with my 100 movies in 100 days, and an interview that's coming up for next week as well with a music artist called Jay DaCosta on fanboysanonymous.com. So check out loads of that stuff. There's tons of stuff going on in the life of Michael Burhan. This Job for Hire also, episode 2 is going to be posted in September, so make sure you check out that as well, starring myself, Brandon Ligon, Eleanor Sanders. Travis Goss is going to be making a cameo on there as well, and Sean Walker. So check back for that episode, and Nikki Mills as well, who's another alum from this show. So make sure you check out all that content, guys. And remember, we've got gameplay. Have you?